Hello, hello. We are about to go live with Go Fit Joe in just a second and talk about some real life happenings because it's been such a crazy time in the world. And today I am drinking, Sophia's. So this is gonna be fun. Okay, and we're just waiting for Joe to sign in. Eileen got us set up with some Sophia's. We also have some organic greens, so we might be doing a little bit of a lunchtime chat with everyone. I need to get the candles going. Thanks, Eileen. All right. Here she is. Hello.
Hello. Let me see if I can get officially connected here.
Okay. I am just about to light my candles because you have a whole vibe going on.
I have a whole vibe in your studio. Let me see if I can get my internet going. Let's see here. Do you by any chance, okay, Wi-Fi?
Yes. As we are waiting for her to get her Wi-Fi on, I have candles in the room. I have my crystals. Trying to get recentered because I just came out of a bunch of different finance meetings, and those are always fun. So one of the things that I'm learning to do is really make headspace for these types of chats because there is a lot happening, and I want to be able to make space for each of our guests to be able to tell their story. And it's been amazing just having all of these different honest conversations with people in our industry. So we're just gonna wait until Joe signs back on. And as we are waiting, I'm just gonna crack open my little champagne. It is a Tuesday, but we are celebrating. So I have a little champagne in a can for our little chat today. Okay, there she is.
I love that we're doing this while I'm literally like across the other side of the building.
I know. But the fact that we're in the same building, it feels good. And
it feels so good. It feels so good. Thank you for inviting me into this space. Thank you for getting me out of my house. And thank you for like holding space for such a beautiful conversation. I love you know me, I love what you do already. So this is incredible. And you're clearly a sister from another mister. So cheers.
Hey, cheers. The fact that we're drinking Sophia's in a can. I mean, why not?
Why not?
And we both have our lipstick on.
We both have our lipstick on. We both have our lunches. Yes. We're going to be really well fed. It's going to be amazing.
Yes. So we have been having conversations this entire month celebrating women and having them tell their stories about how they became who they are and like what they are currently doing in our industries, in our different communities. And today it's all about you, Joe.
Thank you for that. You know, it's interesting because when I think about my journey and the amount of times I have pivoted my life and pivoted career-wise, it has always been because I was chasing what was right for me in that present moment. And there is something very divine about that, and also something to unpack, especially being Filipino American, where the pressure is to find the thing, commit to the thing, do the thing until you die. And for me, I'm like, I want to do the thing that keeps me feeling alive constantly, because then I know that I'm fueling my creative energy and I'm fueling my creative power. So yeah, I mean, The journey is a long one. Where do we begin?
Well, because I just met you about a year ago when you had done the workshop, that amazing life, what do we call it? The
We did a
life
life
workshop.
design workshop here at CL.
It was gorgeous. And I know because of it, I made some pretty big moves in my life. And, you know, I didn't know all the things that you had done previously.
Yeah.
So if you could just give us a quick tidbit on like how you got your journey started in terms of your professional career.
Yeah. So I think one place to kind of to like step back into the planting of the seed of being a creative, I I had a really rough upbringing. There was a lot of domestic violence in my upbringing. Corporal punishment was the way my Filipino parents wanted to discipline us or discipline me. I'm first generation Filipino American and the daughter of immigrants. And so being that, there was just a lot of the way in which my parents wanted to teach me how to become a woman, what career choices I should make, and all the other things. It just didn't feel in deep alignment with who I was. I always felt like I was a woman, a young girl who loved to express herself, who loved to be creative, who loved to move her body. I mean, I'm like an inner child on the outside. Like, and I knew that deep within me. And so because of just like a rough upbringing, I experienced depression in high school. And what saved me from completely, or what transformed my life, I should say rather, was when I fell in love with photography and creative writing. And that was when I first knew that like creativity was going to be the thing that kept me alive. And then I fell in love with doing everyone's hair in high school. Like I became like the kitchen beautician. And so my first career for the first 10 years of like my career journey was actually as a hairstylist. And an educator, a beauty educator for a company called Rusk. And so during that point, I was teaching hair cutting techniques, color techniques, chemical techniques on the stage, and then doing hair behind the scenes or behind the chair. I've also been a wedding photographer for about 7 years, in addition to being a hairstylist at the same time. And then I went to work for Visco as a director of community. And the director of curation over there before going into the wellness space. And the reason why I jumped into the wellness space was because I was finding this startup career and startup life in the Bay Area just really taxing, tiring. I wasn't caring for my well-being. And fitness was what kind of saved me from like this grinding, like constant need to always perform and to always be something. And then it was in my fitness journey where I kind of discovered some of my own internal, I guess, like learnings or woundings or, you know, conditioning, especially around sexual assault, where I started to weave myself organically into becoming a sexual empowerment coach, mainly because I was starting to share my stories of struggle. I was starting to share my healing journey of what it took to heal from, you know, child molestation, from sexual abuse, from sexual assault. And I never imagined that that would actually take me into the route of becoming a sexual empowerment coach, but yet here I am. And here I am pursuing things that like literally makes me come alive yet again. So that has been kind of the ebb and flow and the pivots throughout my life. But when I think about it, and when I look back at every single career, every single thing is rooted in self-expression. Every
I was
single
going to
thing
ask,
is rooted
what
in
is that
creativity.
common thread? Because, yeah, self-expression is huge. I mean, I was just thinking about your stint when you were doing hair, and like I have changed my hair so many times. Like I would like have super long hair and then just chop it or buzz it or color it. And that in itself is its own self-expression. And then just the fact that you were able to ebb and flow into all of these different industries, into different communities, but still be yourself is really, really important to highlight as well.
Yeah. I remember doing hair. The thing that it's funny, I saw one of my clients, actually, one of my hairstyle clients, like pop on live right now, which is awesome. Hi, Benet. One of my biggest missions, or my mission or value statement as a hairstylist, was my goal is to help my clients find their deepest form of self-expression through their
Oh,
hair.
love that.
Because it was just like I could see how they lit up differently. I could see how not only as a hairstylist, when you hold space for people, when you are that safe person for them to like unload their shit, and then on top of that, you're making them feel good by helping them look good on the outside, they transform into so much more. And it's like, it's just hair. And it's a
Right.
3-hour appointment, but
Yeah.
when do people, especially women, get that chance to like literally unwind and unravel?
Right. Well, and that in itself is like a healing, right?
Yeah.
That's like one of the things that I think is also a common theme is like you've been able to help others heal and also take them along your journey
Yeah.
in your own healing. And that's, I mean, I'm just starting to unpack all of the different childhood traumas because yeah, I've been going through some crazy major transitions in my life recently. And I never knew the context or the extent to how many layers deep something would actually be impacting my life now.
Yeah.
So, how did you pivot recently? I know you were doing mostly lifestyle, but it's now even more focused into sexual empowerment.
Yeah. Yeah.
How is that going?
It's, you know, it's a journey in itself, I think. And I'm still I've been, you know, as a sexual empowerment coach, I love it. I think one of the things that I know to be true to the work that I do is that several things to be true. One of them is that women do not know how to find pleasure in themselves or joy in themselves, and they don't know how to express it, right? So when there are some things that are really amazing or giving us deep pleasure and giving us deep joy, and when I think about pleasure, I don't think about the societal constructs of pleasure, which is oftentimes attached to sexual pleasure. I think of pleasure as in like what is pleasurable in your sensations and your sensory
Uh,
experience in that moment, right? Because even for me, it's like putting on a red lip, putting on adornments or jewelry, that brings me pleasure. That
mhm,
changes the way I see myself, right?
mhm,
And so that's part of my like exterior pleasure practice, but also finding pleasure in the body by getting into deep connection with it, by touching it, by letting her know she's safe. That's also being able to find like deep healing in pleasure.
mhm,
So, you know, in terms of like pleasurable expression, giving women an opportunity to understand that pleasure is something that they can access and something that is safe to access within their body, and allowing them to transform that and take that pleasure and actually transform the pain that they might be feeling within their own bodies so that they can actually become more integrated humans and not feeling so much of the pressure from their pain or all
mhm,
those other things, right?
mhm,
So that's like one part of it. Like I know women cannot access pleasure because they are never taught that they can. They were never given permission to access their pleasure. Pleasure was always known to be something used for like sexual activity or for another person's, especially a man's gaze, right? That's just our patriarchal system. So there's like that part. The other part of it, and the reason why I work on sexuality and why I think it's really important, is because it's in our sexuality where we hold the deepest amount of shame within
mm,
ourselves, right?
wow. Mhm,
Like think about think about the first time, think about your first experience with like sex, and think about the messages that you got from it from either parents, people around you. They would tell you that, you know, if like let's say for example, if you got caught masturbating or something as a woman at home, safely in your home, and your mom walked in or your dad walked in, and they approached that event with like, oh my God, what are you doing? Why are you touching yourself? What is the immediate imprinting that happens to anyone at that moment?
mhm,
They immediately shut down and they go, holy shit, I did something really bad with
mhm.
myself.
Yeah, it's a negative connotation that happens, and then that gets ingrained.
It
And
totally
then,
gets ingrained.
so every time it happens again, you're like, ooh, yeah, and it's really
Yeah,
deep-rooted shame, yeah, as a
yeah,
woman.
yeah, yeah. So, and also as a man, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I only work with women, but also I can imagine for any man who's experienced that, that can be really hard too.
It's funny because I have a lot of, so my partner is French and and his friends openly talk about sex in front of their children. And I'm just like, that's like a huge culture shock for me, who grew up Catholic, Filipino,
Same.
traditional. And I'm just like, you're talking, like, your kids are right here.
Same. I mean, I grew up not being able to talk about those things. It took me until I was 35, 33, I think, to finally be like, to wake up to my own wounding, to say, wait a second, if I, as a grown-ass woman, cannot talk openly and safely about my body, cannot talk about my sex in general in a very safe, neutral manner, how am I going to be able to teach my daughters that? What am I perpetuating if I do not rewrite my own narratives of shame around my body and sex into my daughters' lives, right? So like, this is where we start thinking about like intergenerational wounding and intergenerational trauma. And so for me, it was like, the trauma line stops here. Like that train has to stop here, because it's going to keep going into my daughter's lives. And I just don't want that.
Yeah. And it's funny, because like, I always think about my daughters as well, and like, how would I approach that conversation with them? I'm a lot more open, and I let them know what is happening. Whereas like, from when my parents were, they had just moved to California. They were very liberal in the Philippines, but then they became very tight, structured and tight. And then it was like, you can't go out, you can't do this. And I used to always think like, oh my gosh, am I going to be like this as a parent? And so now that I'm a mother of two very sassy ladies, I'm always like, okay, how am I going to communicate it and give them a little bit more context into it, so that I can break that pattern of shame, of guilt, of self-expression. And it's like, it's just been an interesting journey to raise daughters.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that about what you saw in your parents, and then having them move here, and you saw all of a sudden this like restriction of self-expression within themselves, right? So the most interesting thing that I have discovered in my line of work as I was like researching, because I'm the kind of, I'm generally curious by nature. Like I am like, oh, there's a thing, let me keep going down the rabbit hole until I discover.
I'm gonna have a sip if you don't mind.
Yeah, also. For sure. Until I discover the source of the thing. That's just how I am. Like, I sometimes don't ever stop until I get to the bottom line of things. So I remember thinking to myself, like, as a Filipino, in our culture, we have so much self-expression in the art.
Oh,
we dance,
yes.
We sing,
yes.
We express ourselves, we're artistic as hell. And I just remember thinking to myself, how did it all change? How did that change? Where did that go? And in one of my discoveries, as I was researching like sexuality, Asian culture, and like to kind of see where the dismantling happened, one of the things that I discovered was that in the Philippines, we used to believe that men and women were made equal from like the beginning of time. And so it was funny to me to then start to kind of think back at the messages that my mom told me about men and women and how they are supposed to act, and how even in the teachings that my mom taught me, it was like, well, men are superior, but as a woman, like, you should do all these things. Like, you should own all these things, because you can't also trust men.
Yeah.
So it was like, wait, what the hell is this? Like, why is the teaching so weird? And then when I learned that as like Filipinos, even in our sexuality, in tribal culture prior to colonization, we believed in divorce. We believed in premarital sex as part of a ritual, in order to make sure that you were emotionally and sexually compatible with your partner. It was the most like mind-blowing like truth that I learned about the Filipino culture, because I was like, wow, what happened then?
Yeah, where did it change? Yeah, I did not know any of that, so thanks for sharing.
Yeah, because it was beautiful when I discovered it.
Yeah. And is that more on like ancient teachings,
This
or
is this was like dating back to just pre-colonial times. So this was like,
pre-colonial times? Yeah.
yeah, this was like, tribal culture. This was the three main tribes in the Philippines. Each of them had the same origin story of man and woman. Each of them believed in ulugs, which is like a cave. And
Hmm.
that's where you would go and have your premarital sexual rituals. And you would stay in that cave until you decided whether or not that was a compatible match for you.
Wow.
It's like,
Wow. That's a trip to me because, I think growing up Catholic,
there's
there
so
was
much pressure.
so many restrictions. So I don't know if you know this, but I used to be an altar girl
I
back in
was
the day.
too.
And yeah, I mean, I would have like the nose piercings.
Mhm.
I would be drinking the rest of the wine with a priest at the end of the mass, and there's always like this rebellious energy
Yeah.
with good intention. Always
Yeah.
like it was good intentions mixed with like this rebellious, like, why do we have to do it that way? And that's so interesting, knowing like my parents' generation, my grandma's generation, how
Mm.
they were very, very much, religious and traditional. And that's just kept getting passed on. But how far back does it go? And it must, I mean, I don't know.
I
That's,
mean, I haven't done too much research in decolonization,
yeah.
um, but I know that I've been working on decolonizing myself,
Mm.
in terms of just like all of those beliefs, restrictions, and just like really just deeply examining it, just to say what is true for me. What is true for me? What is the reality I want to live in? Because when we can live in that reality, then that becomes more in alignment with us. And then, I mean, you love this, like energetically, we are just this constant flow of beautiful energy, right?
Hmm. Hmm. So, what are some, like, I've been having a bunch of different epiphanies lately, just with
Mm,
having a lot of introspection and,
mm.
healing a lot of traumas and past wounds and really tapping into my inner childhood. What are some epiphanies that you recently had?
Oh, one of my biggest epiphanies that I think I'm currently, working through is I I don't know how to rest. I don't know how to rest.
Uh, you are
And
always go, 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 because
I
then we're
am
always
always,
like,
I mean, like as the name says, go fit Joe, right?
yeah,
So it's, and that also, there's an interesting thing about that too, because there's a part of me that's like, oof, does that name also attach itself to that identity? And can I transform that name so that it doesn't feel like it's a ball and chain to that idea that I have to constantly be on the go, that I have to be like overly productive? So, the biggest epiphany for me lately has been trying to unlearn and rewire this idea of productivity, and like having that productivity attached to worth. And that is so challenging because if you think about the learnings of, Filipino women, right? Like we are constantly taught to work really hard. We are
yeah.
constantly taught to like grind it out all the way through the end
Hmm.
and to never give up, to uphold and be everything in the household and then not rock the boat outside the home.
Hmm.
Right. And I
Yeah.
love what you said about rebel with intention. Like I'm gonna like sit on that because I love that meaning. Because even in that idea of like be reverent, be quiet, be submissive, hold everything up at home, and then don't rock the boat outside of the house. It's like, how much more do you want me to do?
Yeah. And then how much more can you make yourself feel small when you have so much to give, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, like, it's so hard to be so confined and then to have, I think what's happening lately is everybody's having these mini breakthroughs
Yeah. Yeah.
and like mini shifts in consciousness.
Yeah.
So that's progress, which is amazing. But
Right.
it's like, I want more. I want
Yeah.
more, and I want to keep the momentum going, which is honestly, it's part of the reasons why I was like, we need to do a Filipino week
Yeah.
this week because I wanted to tap in with my own inner Filipina.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly haven't even you know, it was tough growing up in the East Bay and having all these different Asians. And it was like, hey, how come Filipino wasn't listed?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Or it'd be like, oh, am I Pacific Islander? Am I Asian?
Yeah.
Am I like, where do I go? How do
Right.
I fit in?
Right. Never
Um,
Asian enough, never white enough,
right,
never black enough,
right.
never enough as a
Yeah,
Filipino. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And then, you know, to hear it from like my grandmother and, you know, just that generation of like, don't go in the sun.
The
And
colorism on top of that.
yeah, and so to have all those things that you were just talking about, all those different you must do's, and then to have like the perception on top of it, it's like
Yeah.
we have a lot to unpack.
Yeah. 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 So for me, it was like realizing that the productivity messaging and you know, I know this already, like I know this on the surface, but I think having to really deeply look at that piece is what I'm facing right now. So
Mm,
in addition to knowing that like that is just a patriarchal message of like productivity is where you're valuable and where you're worth, it's also hard because that was reinforced in the house,
yeah,
right? That was never, I mean, it was always reinforced at home. And so as growing up for me, it was like there was never a place that was safe for me to just surrender into my being,
yeah,
into like my woman being. Like, what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to just be a human being? What does it mean to like find pleasure and joy in the simple things like the sun when, or like hanging out at the park when that was taught to me, or I was conditioned to believe that hanging out at the park was a frivolous thing,
yeah, yeah, me
right?
too, yeah,
Yeah. And so it's like these days, I mean, I'm currently on a I'm currently on like a 6 week sabbatical from doing any kind of work. And by work I mean like anything that is building my business, anything that is growing my business, anything that is like anything to like actually move the needle forward. I'm basically in current like survival mode, because I'm trying to find what is it that where can I find the joy in just being? And I think it's really important as a woman, especially a woman of daughters, right? Like I have two girls, they're 16 and 11. If I don't show them that me as a woman, as the one example in their house, can find pleasure in this simple beingness of her being, then what does that mean? What is the lesson I'm teaching them?
mm,
I'm teaching them that they have to grind away for their worth. I'm teaching them that they have to constantly be productive. I'm teaching them that resting isn't safe. And that is a message that I know my mom taught me, maybe not in those words, but showed me through her actions. And so now for me, like finding safety in rest is something that I am training myself to like do. And
mhm.
it's fucking hard. Like
It
it is
is,
not easy.
it is so hard. I mean, you were calling it the soul sabbatical, which I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
because it's true. Like you need to rest and tap into your own essence without any of that external energy trying to influence it, because then you'll really, really figure out who you really are in that moment.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, yeah, there's so much going on in the world, like the shooting in Boulder, and
Mm.
like I wanted to check in, like how you wrote an amazing article for Shape
Yeah.
recently.
Thank you.
And I wanted to kind of just talk about that because I think, from a mental health standpoint, our Asian community is really, really going through it right now. I
Yeah.
checked in with some of my friends and they're like, I don't know what to think. I don't know how to react. I want to do something. I don't know how to help.
Mm.
And I think what you had wrote was really beautiful. So do you mind
Yeah.
speaking to that?
Yeah. So that interview, that interview came out and it was really interesting because, again, I was like on a sabbatical, but like I had a beautiful, like yoga practice that ended with like a sexy meditation. This is for school. This is for my additional like certification process in Tantra, in integrative Tantra, which is like Tantra mixed with neuroscience. It's amazing. Like it's
Wait,
just,
say that one more time.
it's integrative Tantra. So it's Tantra mixed with neuroscience. It is
What?
fucking like, it is right up my alley with all the things that I love, because it's like hitting the nerdy side and the intellectual side of me, and then it's also hitting the like sensory side with like all of Tantra, and then you pair it with like spirituality, and I'm just like, oh, you've touched all three activations in me. So it's been a lot of just amazing work to learn. So you know, I came onto my IG live and I felt compelled to speak, especially being Asian American and having a platform with enough followers, right? Like I was like, oh, like if I don't say anything, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to my community, but also B, if I say something, then like I'm breaking my own sabbatical, but I'm feeling like I'm very called to this. So I just basically came on my IG live and I expressed how seeing everything that's happening in the news was literally causing my body to have painful reactions. Like I have been in physical pain. Just like my back hurts, my like hips hurt, like my entire body is hurting. And I know that a lot of that is also due to the fact that like seeing that kind of stuff is triggering PTSD in me and intergenerational trauma, and also trauma that I've experienced in my upbringing with like sexual trauma. So it's like this is activating a physical visceral response in my body. And for anybody who's experienced any kind of violence onto their body, or if experienced violence in their environment, their physical environment, there's 4 different responses that our bodies react to in terms of trauma. We go through either a freeze, a fight, a fawn, or I can't even remember the 4th one at the moment. There's 4 different there's 4 different F's though. So it's like fawn, freeze, fight, and flight. So you run, right? And so in that moment, my body was like, because everybody was like texting me, did you see what's going on? I know you're on a sabbatical. I know you're away from social media, but did you see what's happening right now? And I just was like, I'm gonna look at it once, and I immediately felt it in my body. My body was like all 4 things activated, and she didn't know what to do. And so I did what I knew best for my nervous system, which was to re-regulate my nervous system through pleasure, through breath work, through pleasure, through like touching myself, through lighting Palo Santo every freaking day, through like putting on great music, through eating foods that made me feel comforted. And what all of that does, it taps you back into, it activates all your senses and then brings you back to the present moment. There's nothing more healing and nothing more accessible to you for your healing journey than to bring yourself back to the present moment, right? Because when you're in a trauma response, your body has to go through the stress cycle and close it so that it knows that your body is safe. And so in this moment right now, with a lot of our community going, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, what they might be experiencing, and they haven't yet unpacked yet because nobody's ever taught them, right? Like trauma lives in the body, is that your body is probably going through a trauma response and it doesn't know what to do. So what is the first thing that we do as Asian American Pacific Islander? Because we've been conditioned to do this, we work through our trauma. We push through our trauma. We suppress it, we push it down, we don't want to talk about it. We also, because it hasn't been safe for us to express our Asian American Pacific Islander or even immigrant experience to people who are non-Asian, we don't talk about it. And then because there's so many different cultures under Asian, it's like we can't even talk to our other Asian friends because we don't know if they actually are feeling the same thing. Because everyone's experience and everyone handles things so differently. So I think like for a lot of us, we're just like, it's natural for us to be like, I don't know what to do.
There's that feeling of being stuck.
Yeah, because again, your four responses are all activated, and they're like, I don't know what to choose. Do I fawn? Do I freeze? Do I fight? Do I run? Do I flight? Like it literally is your body going, I don't know. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when Shape reached out and wanted to interview me to talk about intergenerational trauma, because they were just like, you spoke about it so eloquently, but so simply, and without putting too much context in it and too much psychology verbiage to it. And you've also provided some like really great ways to kind of retrain your body and your nervous system back down. So that's kind of how that transpired. But it was, I just wanted to share. Like I just felt compelled to be like, look, like I feel I've experienced sexual violence on my body. And hearing the news of women who look like me, who look like my friends, who could look like my mom, who could look like my daughters in the future, that's fucking traumatic.
Yeah.
That's traumatic in itself. And that part is the part that we're not addressing is
Mm-hmm.
trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like in that piece, my favorite sentence from Dr. Gabor Mate, who is a psychologist who just works on trauma. He said, and I will always, like, this will live with me forever, but he said, trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you because of what happens to you. And I love that, because the thing to remember about trauma is like, you and I can be in the same car accident, sitting in both the front seats, and you might be healed from that accident. You might not have any emotional responses after 6 months, and I could be going through it still for over a year.
Yeah.
Maybe over 5.
Yeah.
Right? Or vice versa. And it's like, wait, we were in the same event. How come one person is healed and like super integrated and the other person isn't? It's because trauma is not what happens to you, it's what's happening inside of you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And because in the Asian American Pacific Islander community, we don't talk about our emotions, we don't talk about our mental health, we don't know how to actually heal our trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that you're acknowledging it and you're identifying it, because a lot of the times people just have that feeling, but they don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's because of like, yeah, it's like someone just told me recently, Miriam, told me it's like you keep putting stuff into a box and you have to like really unpack it to get to the bottom of it. You can't, there's no shortcut.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love the analogy that one of my friends told me one time. She just was like, it's as if like, you know, you have this plate and you've got all this shit on your plate, and what we do is we just put more shit on the plate to try to like uncover and like figure out the thing. And it's like, what if you just took off the things on the plate? Yeah. What if you unpacked it? What if you took away the layers? Yeah. And I think that's the hard part, is like unpacking it is very scary. Unpacking
is scary. I mean, I've definitely been unpacking so much and I didn't even know I had that much.
Yeah.
Right? It's because I was doing exactly what you were just talking about, like go, go, go. I'm just going to keep being productive. I'm going to keep doing me. And as I'm thinking, I'm on this path of like, you know, finding my, and I hate to say this, the authentic self. It was like, oh shit. Damn, I thought I was this, but I'm working my way towards it, right? But it's like, oh wow, there's actually a lot that I still had to internally process, internally heal, because of all these little different traumas where they would be, you know, people would tell me, oh, don't cry. Right. Oh, why are you crying? Right. Oh, you're still worried about that. Right. You know, it's very
You're
much
still
like,
worried about that. Oh, yeah. Like that is the most heartbreaking thing for me to hear, because it's one of those things where, again, it goes back to like, you and I could be in the same car accident.
Right.
You could still be experiencing that, and I can already be integrated. And for anybody who says, why are you still worrying about that years later? It's almost like I want to give that person a big fuck you, because it's like, because it's happening in me.
Yeah.
You may not see it, but it's happening in me. And I like, I'm a vessel. My body is a temple. And so if my temple is all fucked up because of trauma that's happening in me, like give me some space.
Give me some space.
Give
And
me some
that
space.
and everybody's unpacking process is at a different stage.
Yeah. At
Right?
a different stage. Oh,
And so you have to honor what stage they're in. And again, it all comes down to like try not to judge and
yeah.
like understanding that there's a deeper connection on like on humanity
Right.
because we are all living in this moment, but everybody's at
Yeah.
different stages.
I mean, I think that's the thing that we're having still, that's what I see as a culture that we're learning, but we're still having a hard time integrating this lesson.
Yeah.
We're having a hard time integrating the lesson of everyone has their own human experience. And we can't actually ask anybody to step into someone else's experience or to be like somebody else because that is their human experience.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is due to the fact that like people do not know how to radically accept themselves. And so I talk a lot about like radical self-acceptance. And to me, radical self-acceptance is literally looking at your, okay, it's like this is like the best way to describe it. It's walking into your shitty ass room that is a mess. Underwear is everywhere. Your laptop is open. Like maybe there's food there. And there's also this like beautiful corner that is like untouched, unscathed from the chaos. And it's really, really pretty, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, you walk in and you're like, oh shit, this shit's a mess, right? And all you do is like go, you know what? It's cool because I can be at peace with it for now and it's going to change if I choose to change it. But if I don't, I can also radically accept this state and work with it, right? So that's like one physical description of like what it can feel like.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I think like radical self-acceptance is like knowing your shit, being conscious of your shit, and still rising through it while still transforming it over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or
that
choosing not to
room
change it.
visual is perfect because
Yeah.
that's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, and then still finding some joy in it, right? Like, because it's like you know your room is a shit show, and you're like, well, I can get really mad at myself right now, or I can just be like, okay, do I want to choose to change the shit show and change my reality, or do I want to live in this room right now? I'm gonna live in this room for a minute. I'll change it tomorrow.
Yeah,
like it's cool.
And I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it. Like it's like sitting there going, oh God, my laundry is right here.
Yeah.
Like,
and instead of constantly like, oh my gosh, I have shit to do.
Yeah.
And then not really being present.
Right.
And not finding pleasure or like joy.
Yeah.
In being.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, I mean, it's a great visual, I think. And I think about like my daughter's room all the time. I mean, she's a teenager. Right. So it's just like, I love how somebody's like, I'm looking at that pile of laundry right now.
Oh, I always forget about the comments. Hi, everyone.
Hi, guys. Yeah. So, I mean, I think about like my daughter right now and I think about like who she is becoming and how do I want to create a safe space for her in her becoming. Right. And like as much as a mom, I want to like come in and be like, clean your fucking room. Yeah. I'm also like, she's got to figure this out on her own. Yeah. And eventually she's going to be a grown ass woman who does not like her room dirty anyways. So she'll figure it out.
Yeah. And they have to figure it out because they're on their own human experience journey, right? Like and that's always been like as a mother, my own kids challenge me all the time and I love them and I adore them and they have all of these really amazing sayings that they've just come up with on their own one of them I don't want to speak for them but one of them recently was just like I really like how you acknowledge our space and I was just like wow thank you. Like they're teaching me stuff, right? Because they don't have all the filters or all the maybe, hopefully not all the traumas that we've experienced. And they're just coming from such a pure hearted space. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, you're welcome. Yeah, of course, no problem. And really they're talking about their room. Yeah. The way that they acknowledge it and name it is really interesting to me.
Yeah, you know, I've been teaching my girls lately. I keep telling them, especially these last 2 weeks, because, you know, solo parenting, single parenting, and currently like living in, well, I'm currently like divorcing, right? So we've got 2 households. And I told my daughters, I said, in this household, I'm raising queens. So in this household, as you are being taught to be queens, there's a difference between commanding your presence and demanding your presence. And I said queens are sovereign, so they understand what is present inside of them, they understand what's present outside of them, and they also understand how to command that feeling of presence. I said we don't demand shit. Queens don't demand. That is a princess. And you are not princesses. I'm not raising princesses. I'm raising queens. So you will speak to me politely. You will speak to others politely. You will ask for the things that you want with politeness and grace and gratitude, because that's the only way that you're going to get things in this lifetime, is through that. But also, you're going to do it with power. You're going to do it with power, and you're going to do it with a centered, grounded power. Because like, I was like, this is shit my parents didn't teach me. This is not what my mom taught me. I wish she did. I wish she did. This is life experience teaching me, but I was like, I'm going to bestow that upon you guys. So I was like, you are queens and you can command your sovereignty, not demand your sovereignty. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah. So you can definitely pass that on. You'd be like, Auntie Joe said this.
Yeah. Auntie Joe said,
you are queens commanding your sovereignty, not demanding your sovereignty.
I'm just going to hold the phone up and you're going to say it to them. Oh, I love that you live so close, and
I do too.
We're gonna get our kids together very, very soon.
Yeah, I mean it's been amazing to, you know, it's funny because I love how everything has come full circle for us. I mean, I was here a year ago, right before the pandemic, teaching and holding a workshop, and you know, honestly, Cecilia, that was such a gift to me, because it was the first time, I think, in a long time where I was like, wow, I'm a powerful coach. I'm a very powerful coach. And it was one of those things that I think what also has been hard for me, what I'm trying to lean into and also very much embody and integrate, is the truth that I am powerful, I'm successful, and I can do whatever the fuck I want. And that's hard because growing up Filipino, you're also taught not to talk about your success and not to boast about yourself or to boast about your talents, and to lift everyone up around you, which I highly believe as well. However, if you don't know how to lift yourself up, how can you lift up others, right? Like that's, and how can you celebrate and honor others if you really do not know how to celebrate and honor yourself?
Exactly.
And that's like, you can't do that. You
Amen,
just
sister, because that's literally, you have to be able to take care of yourself and know where you stand in that moment in order to help others stand as well.
Well, because it's performative celebration.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's just like, I could look at you and go, yeah, I'm so happy for you. But if I have some deep-seated insecurity because I can't honor my own success deep within me, then of course it's just going to be like, oh, fuck yeah, I celebrate her, but like, I wish I had all those things too.
And then the insecurities come up.
Yeah.
And then it's like, whoa. See, and then you go back into the unpacking.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, this is, I think I should like make a meme that says like, being an adult means just like unpacking your trauma and like unlearning and then repacking it into a different context and then and unpacking it again over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until you're 60 and you're just like, I don't give a fuck about any of it.
That's what I'm waiting for. The I don't give a fuck moment.
Same.
Oh, yeah. And it's so interesting raising daughters in this time because, like, you know, I'm very outspoken in my home and here, but I wasn't as a child.
Yeah.
And so for them to be able to witness it, I think is very empowering.
Yeah.
And I think because we are able to have these open conversations, just even on IG Live, like you and I would have this conversation off.
Totally. We'd have this conversation in a hike.
We're doing that, by the way.
Yeah.
Soon. But But it's like, these are topics that no one would ever talk about in public or in a small group setting or anything,
Yeah.
because they weren't able to name it and acknowledge it.
Mm.
You know, and I love the way that you're able to do that. Like you say it, I agree with the Shape editor and like how you were able to eloquently, see, I'm not eloquent, but, but how you were able to eloquently put it into simpler terms.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a huge gift of yours that you're able to give to
Yeah, thank you. I do hope that that is medicine for a lot of people. Like, you know, it was funny because when Shape reached out, I was like, I have to be honest with you guys, I'm on a sabbatical. So like
You told them that?
yeah, I was like, I'm on a
Good
sabbatical.
for you.
So us doing this story right now feels very misaligned in what I told my community. However, I feel like I also need to speak up because I don't think anybody's gonna fucking speak up. So I'll do this story. I was like, but like we need to honor my sabbatical. And so if you can find me somebody who can just like transcribe what I say to them, please do that, because I don't have the energy to write.
Yeah.
I need to take care of my own healing. I'm like, so much shit has come up for me during this pandemic, and I need to focus on that because that is important to me, because I don't want to perpetuate the same bullshit that was in my life, my mother's life, that my kids might have in the future, right? I just didn't want that. Like I said, the trauma train stops here. Like it stops with me and I'm not doing it anymore. So they were so beautiful in doing that. And they were so great about it. And when it came to like sharing like the tips, right? It's like going to like how to take care of yourself. I was thinking about it and I just was like, God, there's so many, I mean, obviously the obvious things like take this, do this. But I think the biggest thing that I added in there was like demand for rest. Take time off. Ask your bosses for time off. Like, and I put that in there specifically because I was like, I'm so scared to ask for time off. Even for myself, I'm my own goddamn boss, and I'm scared to ask myself for time off, to give myself permission time off. And I know you're the same.
Yeah,
you know,
I am. I mean,
own this business.
I was just thinking about telling my team how I want to take the time the girls are on spring break. I want to take that time off, and there was a sense of like guilt and like,
yeah,
but yeah, exactly. I do feel the same.
Yeah. And I mean, it was one of those things where I just was like, I know for myself, I feel so guilty taking time off. I have so much shame taking time off because, again, cultural messaging. If you take a nap, if you take time off, you're lazy. And it's like, how the fuck am I supposed to have energy to be productive if I actually don't take the time to rest? If I don't take the time to integrate, if I don't take that time that I need. So those were some things that I put in there. And then also like grounding and pleasure right now is so important. And for anyone who's like listening, who is having a hard time with all the shit that's going on right now, the most important thing that you can do for yourself and your body, because your body doesn't know. The thing about our bodies is that our bodies are primal. There hasn't been evolution in our physical bodies for years as human beings. And so the mapping through our bodies is like primordial intelligence, right? Our bodies and our brain, also our primordial brain, is the primordial brain. The only function of that part of our brain is to survive. And so right now, because we are in survival mode, all our brains are going to do is activate all of our fight and flight responses. It's all it knows how to do. And so grounding yourself in pleasure, telling your body it's safe, touching your body in the morning or at night, especially in the morning at night, in the bookends of your day, and letting your body know, hey, you are safe. I love you. I accept you completely. You are safe. Like, it is safe to rest. It is safe to wake up. It is safe to be here, is retraining your brain to remember that too.
And when you're saying pleasure, just to go a little deeper into that, you're not just talking about sex. You're talking a sensual touch.
I am talking sensual, yeah. And I also, like, when I think about sensuality, when I talk about sensuality, Because again, societal conditioning, right? Societal conditioning makes us believe, or has trained us to believe, that when we talk about sensuality, we think about that whole first step to like sex. It is the foreplay. It is the R&B music. It is like all that sexy shit before
You
you
said
start
R&B
fucking.
music.
I mean, I love my R&B music, but like
Me too.
that's how we've thought about sensuality,
Hmm.
right? When we think about, when we even hear the word sensuality, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
Well, see, I'm a very sensual person, and I think you and I had this
Yeah,
conversation where like, I'm
yeah,
a prude. I don't like to
yeah,
talk about the deed, but
yeah,
I mean, obviously very sensual with like nature. I have
yeah,
tons of plants,
yeah,
candles,
yeah, yeah,
that to me, like heightening your senses
yes.
is sensuality.
Yeah, yeah. So for you, you and I, we have the same definition of sensuality. For me, it's a very primary sensory experience, and in your five senses, right? Your taste, your touch, your sense of smell, sound, and sight. Everything about that
Right.
is sensuality for me. It is your five senses. The reason why your five senses are super important as a human being is because that is the first thing that you learn as an infant, is your five senses. So what does that do? That helps you to get back into your body
Hmm.
and helps to create safety in your body. So when I talk about like sensual self-pleasure or sensual touch, I do mean like using body oils and using, like, turning on candles, all those things that provide you a sensory experience so that you can get back into your body.
Hmm.
And once you can get back into your body through pleasure, and even with like pleasure, it's like touching yourself in a way that feels pleasurable. Has nothing to do with orgasm, nothing to do with a sexual experience.
Hmm.
Even for me, and this is really funny, looking through like most of my Instagram photos, I touch my hair a lot. Touch my hair a lot, a lot. And part of that is because I love the way my hair feels. And I love the way I can experience my hair through touch. And doing that actually helps me to like drop back into my body very quickly. And when I even touch my hair, I notice like the healthy strands to like the dyed strands and the different textures of it. But noticing that is also being present with yourself.
And that's pleasurable too.
It's pleasurable for me.
Yeah.
And so for some people, it could be like massage. It could be like touching the shoulders. It could be touching your breast. It could be
Yeah.
touching your like pussy, your vulva, whatever. It could be fucking rubbing your legs. Whatever feels good for you in that moment, do that, because that helps to retrain your body that it's also safe to be in your body.
I think, see, for me, I identify the word pleasure,
Hmm.
that's where my prudishness comes in, and I'm like, ooh, sex. The way that you're speaking to it is very sensual. It
Yeah.
isn't just that. It's
Yeah.
activating all your different senses.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's gonna take a lot of us, it's gonna take a lot of like retraining, right? Like
Yeah.
retraining the mind. So even with my clients, I always like start first. What is your first definition of sex? What is your first definition of sensuality? What is your definition of pleasure? How can we take your definitions then and decondition your definition so that we can write you a new narrative? And that way it's far more in alignment and more pure. Because even a lot of people think like sexual liberation is like going out there and like fucking everybody. And I'm like, no, sexual liberation is being free about how you believe your sexuality to be. It's owning yourself, it's owning your sovereignty
Yeah.
and knowing whatever's true to you, right?
Mhm.
But it's taken us a long time because no one's ever said, hey, what does sex mean to you? How do you
Yeah.
define it?
Yeah.
How would you like to define it?
How would you like to
Yeah.
define it?
And
Yeah.
how would you like to embody that? Right?
Oh man.
So,
I was just thinking about like, so my two girls are 10, Ava's
mm,
almost 11,
yeah.
Ava's 9. I haven't had that talk yet.
Mm.
And
I'll
if
be there
they're
with you.
watching, oh my God. I mean, so I know I'm going to approach it with an open mind and
Yeah.
give a lot more context about it than I ever received. Like,
Yeah.
it was very much in our household, like, ew, my parents, ew, mom and dad are kissing. Like,
Yeah.
so if
That
we're
wasn't
activating
mine.
pleasure,
Yeah. That
it's a
was mine
different thing.
too. That was
Yeah.
mine too. And I think it's funny you say that because one of the things that I remember, like here's another unpacking thing. But I remember seeing my mom, and when my dad would kiss my mom was very much so like, oh, don't kiss me, but like kiss me. Like it was like so weird,
It was contradictory.
It was contradictory because she just was like, oh, don't kiss me, but like
Yeah.
he would kiss her, and she looked like she was in pain. And I don't know if it was like a joking thing because she was
Yeah.
trying to be a fawn, right? Like she was the natural fawn response looks like, oh, save me, like save me, but don't save me. Like that is a fawn
Yeah.
response, right?
Yeah.
And so in witnessing that, I think for me, when it came to intimate partners, for a very long time, I had a hard time receiving pleasure because I wasn't sure if it was something I could trust. Why? Because that's what my parents modeled for me.
What a trip. Isn't that
So
crazy
one of
that
the
that's impacted your relationships?
Totally. So one of the things that I know now for me as I step into my new life and as I step into my new reality and as I want to rewrite a new reality is what is the pleasure, love, and relationship that I want my daughters to see? And I want them to witness a very conscious relationship, one that talks about all the things openly without shame between partners, because I think that's super important. And I
Totally.
also want them to see what it looks like to plan and consistently repair. Repair is like the most important thing because I think for, me growing up, Filipino American, I didn't see my parents like make up. I didn't know what the repair process looked like in a relationship.
Yeah, a lot of those things, a lot of the emotions were behind closed doors. So it was hard for me growing up. Same thing. It was like, oh, they're okay.
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen? Oh, well, let's just keep playing. And
Yeah.
so I like that you're speaking to a conscious relationship.
Yeah, yeah, because I think it's important. Like I think for all of us to like, come out of this pandemic and step into this new reality of humanity, we have to I've been using this language too. It's like we talk about being fucking woke and we talk about waking up to our consciousness. And for me, I'm like, it's not enough to wake up to our consciousness. We have to rise into it because you can lay awake in your bed all fucking morning and not do shit.
Mm-hmm.
Rising requires for you to take action and get up and do something. And so like now these days I'm like, what do I need to do to rise into my consciousness? Not just wake up to my consciousness, but like rise and actively do something with it.
Yeah.
We have a question really quick. So Nichols Marcy is asking, growing up it was so undercover, but now having a 17-year-old, I'm trying to be as open as possible, but sometimes takes me off guard. Am I being too open with her? It's probably pertaining to like sex and those conversations. The way that I view this is everything is age appropriate. When having a very sex positive household where you talk about sex openly, consider age and just consider what you feel is appropriate at the time. If your daughter is 17 years old and my daughter is about to be 17 in May, so like literally a couple months, I know that she has access to the internet and I know she has access to everything. In our house, we leave a very open door in terms of the conversations. I basically say, Mom is comfortable talking about all these things, this entire range. You may not be, so whenever you're ready, feel free to like walk through that door and we'll have that conversation. And if there are things I don't know, I will literally say, I don't know, that's a great question. Can I look it up for you? Or should we look at this together? And that allows it to be a collaborative effort versus like me trying to say my truth is the only truth that you should know about sex, because I think there's going to be so many things out there and I want her to feel empowered to know her truth and to like define her truth for her. And yes, I want to guide that as her mother, but I also think it's important that she feels empowered to make the decisions on her behalf because she's going to be the expert of her body and she's going to be the expert of her own knowledge. And I highly believe in respecting the sovereignty of other human beings. So hopefully that answered your question.
That was a beautiful answer.
Thank you.
You're also helping me. So now I'm like, okay, what am I going to do?
Yeah, I mean, like that sex talk. Oh man, I feel free to like call me when you have that, because I remember before I had the sex talk, I like think I had like 2 glasses of wine, and I just was like, I am not prepared for this, so we're I'm gonna ground myself in alcohol because that's like the smartest thing to do. And I basically like allowed her to guide the conversation. I was like, look, I want to have this sex talk with you. And I know you have access to the internet. I know you have friends, I know you have peers, and you have school. What did you learn in school? If we could start there. What did you learn in school? And then from there, like, let me know if I can fill in the blanks for you. So she told me what she learned at school through sex ed. And I was like, awesome, that's great. Is there anything else? And she was like, no. I'm like, do you have any questions? And, you know, like it became the whole like tampon thing first. It was like whole body stuff first.
Yeah.
And then I was like, awesome. Well, is there anything about sex that you want to know, like intercourse itself? And she just was like, no. And I go, okay, great. And then I just was like, well, the one thing I do want you to know is that consent means for everything. This means like I said, you should get consent. You should require and receive consent for every act. And that can be easily asked as far as like, is this okay for you? And if it feels like a fucking no to you, it's a no. Like, do not allow yourself, do not abandon yourself and say, yeah, I think so, because people need to hear a straight no.
Yeah, and setting boundaries.
Yeah.
I think
so
really important.
That was the one thing I told her. And then I also told her that like in this house, I believe that sex can happen without love and love can happen without sex. And I wanted her to know that because I didn't want her to feel pressured to do something just because she was in love with somebody. And I also didn't want her to feel as if she couldn't explore her sexuality if love and that level of intimacy was not present.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah,
it's your body. I'm not gonna. I don't have a say in it, but like these are the things I want you to know.
Yeah. No, that's real. I love that.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna be like, yeah, go talk to Untitled Chapter when my kids are of age. I am just checking the time.
Yeah.
I think this is a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Because I want us to have time to eat as well, our lunch. Where can people find out more about what you're doing? And
well, first, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I always love being in conversation with you and in community with you, so I appreciate that so much. You can find me on everything on social is at GoFitJoe, so you can find me there. I'm also like dipping in and out of Clubhouse rooms. So if you want to like dip into some conversations, I'm also GoFitJoe on Clubhouse. You can find me on my website, gofitjoe.com. And I also have a podcast called Nothing Confidential, where we talk about all things around sex, love, relationships, female sovereignty, power, and creativity. So yeah, find me there too.
Love it. Okay. Well, and I'm also just realizing I accidentally signed on to my personal. So I will post this on
CL one.
CL Creative Space. Yo, let's have lunch.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.